Now, for more on this, we're being joined by Editor-in-Chief of BNE IntelliNews, Ben Aris from Berlin. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Sir, I want to begin by asking you, now we are getting reports that Russia has accused Ukraine of shooting down the military plane that was carrying 65 prisoners of war, Ukrainian prisoners of war, and all those on board, they were headed for a prisoner exchange, in fact. The question is, why would Ukraine down a plane that was carrying 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war? That is the question at this point.
Well, the first thing I have to say is that there is a lot of confusion as to if there really were 65 prisoners of war on this plane. The Ukrainian military directorate has confirmed and said that there were, but the Ukrainian Defense Ministry said that there wasn't 65 prisoners of war. And this plane is a military plane. Normally, the Russian side, when they're doing a prisoner swap, will inform the Ukrainians of how they're getting there, the kind of transport, where they're going to. Apparently, the Russians didn't make this announcement to the Ukrainians. They said themselves in their statement that they weren't informed and they weren't told not to shoot down planes because there might be prisoners of war on them, which is unusual. So, as I say, there are a lot of questions here. It remains in dispute. The Belgorod, as you mentioned, is only 40 kilometers from the border, and Belgorod itself is being shelled regularly by the Ukrainian side. And so this is an active combat zone as far as the border regions are concerned. And so a military plane taking off is a legitimate military target. And Ukraine has been hammering Russia's increasingly inside Russia's own territory, has been attacking these transport planes which are carrying missiles and what have you. So, as I say, the water has become very muddied as to the existence. The last piece of evidence that some people on social media have brought up is all the footage we've been shown of the crashed plane. There doesn't seem to be any bodies. There were 74 people on the plane altogether. It was blown up as it took off. And so it wasn't very high, and you would have thought that the corpses would be close to the plane. And when the Malaysian plane came down, MH17, several years ago, the field, unfortunately, tragically, was littered with bodies, and there doesn't seem to be any. So, as I say, it remains very confusing as to if there really were some prisoners of war on this plane.
Right, sir, absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has called for an international probe as well. And Moscow, in fact, has called this crash an act of terror. So the blame game definitely continues. And I would say that this is rather very telling of where things stand between the two nations. What is your assessment on that front?
Well, it's such a spectacular story that both sides have picked it up and they're both in an information war, propaganda war against each other. And so they're going to play this up as much as possible. And as I say, in the context of the downing of the Malaysian MH17 plane, that this one is catching the headlines, everybody's paying attention to it, and both sides are trying to make maximum use of it. The Russians have been saying this is an atrocity, that they're killing their own prisoners of war. The Ukrainians are saying that the Russians are playing a game here to try and sully the Ukrainian side, and particularly using this. I mean, a senior Russian politician has already sent a letter to the UN saying that the West should stop sending these anti-air defense missiles, Patriots. He claimed that this plane was shot down by a Patriot, and Ukraine has been calling for more munitions to keep its air defense working. And so the whole thing's very quickly got wrapped up in the geopolitics, the tensions between the two countries, and that's just muddied the water further. So it's going to become less and less clear what happened, I think, as we go on.
All right. Well, Mr. Ben Aris, thank you so much for joining us on WION with your insights on this.
My pleasure.